Welcome to Trailer Rewind, a monthly conversation about movies you may have missed in theaters that are now available to watch at home on streaming services. Every month we dig into the archives and watch a film that was a trailer pick. You can get access to the SatMat shows where we currently do our trailer picks at patreon.com/thenextreel. It's a great way to get an overview of everything we do here at The Next Reel. JJ, today we're talking about The Edge of 17.
Yep. Yes, we are.
This one goes back a ways. This was Andy's pick from August 10th, 2016. So pre-SatMat. It was actually the Children of Men episode, I think, when Andy picked this one. Yes, so today, May 14th, 2019, Edge of 17 is available on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, back in 2016, Edge of 17 was released in theaters on November 18th, and it stayed in theaters until January 5th. So, very short time, I guess maybe hitting the kids on winter break or Christmas break.
Sure.
Pulled in about $14 million in the U.S. and an additional $4.5 million internationally. It was available for streaming purchase, like on iTunes and other digital services, later that same January, and hit Blu-ray and DVD on Valentine's Day 2017.
Got it.
It didn't become available streaming on Netflix until just this February 2019. So a good 2 years there out on DVD and digital before hitting streaming. As far as I know, this is the first time it's now hit streaming service.
I didn't think it was that old. I felt like I remembered it like in the recent history, but that's 3 years. Wow, that's amazing.
I felt the exact same way. I thought, this must have just been like last year or something like that. But it's been several years, but it still feels fresh to me. So
much.
Andy said that back in 2016 that it was his time to watch a movie like this before his daughter got older and hit those teen years. And if you've been listening to the SatMats, I think we see that he is fully into that teenagerdom at his household there. And that he thought this was going to be maybe a lesson movie for him. But he said it hit all the right places for him. The bitingly funny yet dark, felt, just like reality. And Pete said he felt like that it was clearly channeling the darkness of being a teenager. And I believe he was speaking from experience of having one at home as well at that point.
Yes.
And I know I do. I've got two of them. One's actually out of the house now. But yeah, I think this is an interesting one to see as a parent of teenagers, because I can reflect on what my memories of high school were like, but then I have to look at this from the perspective of the parents in the film. And am I that type of parent?
Yeah. And there's not, if Andy was thinking it's a lesson movie and if you're thinking that it's really not about the parents. There's not a whole lot of things you can learn as a parent by watching this movie. This is a movie that's really focused on the teens, I think.
So what did you think of this one?
I really liked it. I was really impressed with the script and the dialogue in particular. I thought and then the actors in their delivery of it too. It was complicated emotionally because there was so much sarcasm and wry humor and a lot of sort of fake outs that they needed to portray an emotion and then sort of reel it back very quickly because they tried to do this sort of awkward teenage thing. And I felt like every actor did it. And even though, I guess 3 years ago, let's see, Haley Steinfeld was 19 3 years ago. So she was still a teen at that time. But some of the actors are much older playing teens. Yes. So it was impressive what they did. And I think that the script was great. There was some innovative camera in spots too, some thoughtful camera that wasn't sort of overly artistic, but did very simple things that demonstrated camera art in a very special way that I always grab on. In general, I think it's a really, really good movie and really strong, a lot stronger than I would have expected going in.
I think this one I was expecting. Well, typically with teen movies, you get more of the comedies, and this one does. It has its comic moments, but it then really, to me, balances that out with the drama of everything that is going on with Nadine.
Yeah, this is a dramedy for sure. Yeah,
yes, I think we're full on in dramedy, and it is that that other side of humor is the tragedy of things, and Nadine is walking that line back and forth. And I wasn't sure what to make of the setup of this because when you start a movie and then you immediately go back to, well, let me tell you how things started. And I thought, oh, do we need to use this device? Do we really need to set this up with Nadine walking into her teacher's classroom and talking about how she's going to kill herself? And then, oh, how did we get here? And I don't know that that's necessary in this movie to create the artificial tension or drama that we now have to do. So now we have a reason to be invested. I think Nadine is an interesting enough character, and the setup that we get through the flashbacks of not having a friend and finding that close friend when she's in second grade, and then losing her father and everything falling apart for her. Then that happens, I think, in such a compressed way that I didn't need that early setup of, oh, Nadine's life is so horrible, she's talking to her teacher about suicide. How did you feel about that pivot there?
I forgot, actually, until it came back to us. I didn't even realize that it was kind of flashback or however you want to see it, because I just, because of what you're saying, I became so invested in the characters. And I think actually that's a tribute to the actors. I think it may have been written with this particular convention, not knowing what they were going to get when they put everything together. The budget for the film was $9 million. They have a great cast, and they performed spectacularly well. And I think maybe they didn't have a sense of how compelling Nadine was going to be, but Hailee Steinfeld was pretty much pitch perfect. She could have been a little bit more over the top in places, but she was great, and I was invested in her extremely early. And then putting her in with Haley Lou Richardson as they just start to sort of create that outsider but important bond friendship, I was bought in the entire time. So I think for the reasons you're mentioning, I totally get why it feels out of place. But that being said, I had forgotten that it was happening. And when it came back, it wasn't a bother to me. But I agree with you. I don't think it's necessary because the actors were so good in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's not something that takes away from it. But now that I'm aware of it, I thought, oh, don't shortchange yourself. You didn't need it. It is nice when it comes back to it. You're like, oh, yes, okay. Because it is, fairly late in the movie where, oh, okay, here's where we are. And I think this is, it's a credit to writer-director Kelly Freeman Craig. This is her first film she directed. She had previously written a short film and then a feature called Post Grad that was, and I think Pete mentioned this when they were talking about the trailer. This was back in 2009 with Alexis Bledel about a graduate who then has to move back in with her parents because she's trying to find the right job, all of that. Not a movie I remember much about, but I would say for directing your own script, I think that was the touch that was really needed with this for Kelly Freeman Craig to know this story, to be really to understand these characters and be able to bring that to life with these actors. And what a great cast that she put together with this, to get this cast. But again, I think in doing a little bit of research, this was a spec script that she had sent to James L. Brooks, sort of, thinking this is somebody that has inspired her, and she took a shot. And this is one of those rare stories where it came off. And when you get somebody like that to be attached to your project, can really help get things done correctly.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned the cast. I don't think there's a weak link in it. I mean, and I didn't know everybody coming to it, and in particular Hayden Zito playing Irwin, and I thought he was fantastic. Of course, he was 31 when they made this movie, but beyond that, I mean, I just was so impressed with the cast, and I really applaud the script. I think the script was really well written, and it shows that she was really well connected with her actors to get this sort of complicated or complex humor delivered in a way that was entertaining the whole way through. I thought it was spectacular.
Well, it's a unique take on a story for a sort of teenage comedy drama. We don't have, it as you're going through, it's really very much a character piece about Nadine. We don't have a big plot of like, oh, getting ready for the prom with everybody all the stories pushing towards one pivotal moment. It's really a character-centered piece. It's not about, the meet cute and we're going to see how this relationship plays out. It's really about Nadine and the journey that she goes on, which I think can make it a bit of a challenging film if you're expecting something lighter, if you're expecting something simpler with this.
Yeah, it's not.
We have, Nadine, and as we just briefly discussed, we've got, this point where we see she's got this best friend, Krista, that they've known each other a long time. And we see that Nadine loses her father. And the dynamic is set up early on that she and her mother don't get along. Her brother is like, Mr. Perfect. Everything goes his way. And all she's got is her dad.
Right.
She really connects with. She loses him, and then we jump forward several years later. She's making it through, but it's Krista is really that foundational relationship. It's just that's the only person in her life. And when she loses Krista to her brother, that's when I think Nadine's world starts unraveling. And throughout this, we do have these great scenes with her teacher, Mr. Bruner, played by Woody Harrelson, and the dynamic between those two is, I think, just one of the joys in this movie for me, because they're so smartly written. There's sarcasm between the two. She comes sarcasm. She comes in. She is always there at lunch because she has no one else, and he will just throw the sarcasm right back at her, and it's this banter back and forth between the two of them.
Hey, so just a heads up, but yesterday when you were giving your lecture, you were like, oh, blah, 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 then the North seceded from the Union. You meant to say the South seceded. You accidentally said the exact opposite. I didn't want to raise my hand and be all, excuse me, these kids are pretty confusable. Just thought maybe you'd want to know.
Oh, hey. Great catch.
Yeah.
Now, I know that it was a long lecture and you probably don't recall, but was there any point during it where you thought to yourself, gosh, I wonder what it's like to actually have a life?
Nope. No, I was too concentrated on how you're effing the whole thing up, so.
Well, I understand that, but just know that I haven't given up hope. Not yet.
Okay.
You start to see he's aware of the role that he's playing in her life.
Yeah.
And we get that much, much later on. But it's at first it's these lighter moments when we're dealing with, the drama at home with her brother and losing her best friend to her brother. And then, of course, drama with mom, who, is the challenges of a single parent. We have all of those things going on with Nadine trying to hold her life together and everything slipping through her fingers. And everything culminates in a really bad decision she makes with, the hot guy that came back from juvie.
Wait, is there? He did come back from juvie? I didn't notice that. I didn't know he was a bad guy too. Is that hidden in there?
He was. It's early on when Nadine and Krista they're just talking. And she's like, "Oh, no. Yeah, no." They just talk. She's like, "Oh my gosh, he's so much hotter since he came back from juvie." Yeah, so he's sort of.
I wonder if that was sarcasm.
Bad
true
boy.
Too. I don't know. I thought that scene. Well, first of all, it holds up because it's a social media trip up, right? She put something explicit over social media as an invitation to this bad guy. And it holds up because though it's not the same as the world is, even 3 years later, the issues are still there. So I think that's amazing that it holds up in that way. And then the way it's experienced, both from the teenage girl and from the teenage boy's perspective, it seems very real. It seems like something that would actually happen, and it's not something that's likable. It's a super awkward position that they've actually unfortunately put each other in, and they're reacting to one another, and it of course breaks down because it's terrible, and she does it impulsively when she feels lonely and terrible. But it's just the fact that it's examining that, and the fact that it does it in such a smart way is really special about this movie. And those kind of things don't usually hold up, even for 3 years. Those kind of things usually are of the moment and then they're gone. And this is a really nice. It's a nicely written scene that can really resonate with kids even today.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you're latching onto in there is that it's his side as well, because he's got this line where he's like, I should have listened to my friends. And it's not that
I didn't hear him say that. That's
human,
great.
Yeah. It gives him that human side too of, okay, here's this girl. She's throwing herself at me. She sends me this really explicit text message and he's like, okay. And then we get that side of just, there's so many great silences in that scene where she's like, she finally says no. And he's like, fine. And then he's just there and he's just stewing. And like, what is he supposed to, how is he supposed to react to her? And we get that sense of, everybody sort of thinks Nadine's a little bit of a psycho because she just is so impulsive and making all these bad decisions. And he's not the bad guy in this scene. I mean, he starts to put a move on her. She's like, no. Then she feels bad. She starts kissing him on the neck. So he starts moving in again and she's like, no. And then she mocks his car.
Inadvertently. And that's the thing.
Inadvertently by being specific.
That is the great thing about this script, because and Haley Steinfeld delivers it so perfectly. She is this character who would, in an ironic way, bring up the specificity of his old used car, which I had an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme when I was in high school that was completely mockable in the same kind of way. I loved it, and I would have probably taken it personally in the same way that he did. But she delivers this line where it's completely just ironic, specific. It's just consistent with her character, and he takes it as mocking, and it's so perfect, and it's delivered really well. That scene really highlights how well written and how well performed this script is in this movie. Wait, it's a Mercury Marquis?
Mercury Marquis.
And of course,
yes.
if you're Nadine, of course you remark about the fact that you're sitting pulled up to a dumpster in a Mercury Marquis for literally the first time she's ever kissed a boy. And but the stuff she said in her social media post was a lot more racy than that. So
yes,
it's a wonderfully awkward and terrible teenage situation.
It has so many of those true moments. The other, when she's on the Ferris wheel with Erwin, and she just a great moment where she's like, oh, tell me about your parents. Oh, wait, let me guess. And then spools out a bunch of things and then thinks, oh my gosh, did that just come off as horribly racist? Because, Erwin's, clearly have some Asian descent there. And she's like, am I throwing these stereotypes out? And he's like, no. And then awkward moment, and then he moves in to kiss her, and it's just the worst. It's the worst, most awkward thing. They also have another awkward moment when she's over at his house in the pool.
Yep.
I mean, it's just the awkwardness of teenagers trying to be mature, trying to make smart choices for themselves, and it just backfiring.
Trying to learn the difference between flirting and affiliating. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
I mean, I think Nadine sees it as just, sort of playful affiliation in Erwin's case. And,
right.
But they don't know each other. And we think about what it's like to be a teenager, and you rush everything. You move to this state of intimacy in such a short amount of time because you're only in high school for either 3 or 4 years. So you're experiencing a lifetime of those attempts at affiliation and flirtation and really becoming a grown-up in such a short amount of time. This movie does such a good job of showing that. And again, it is the teen story. I don't know. Did you take away any parenting lessons from this movie?
No. Well, because the parents make bad mistakes. And that's the other part of this dynamic is Nadine is being that teenager, but then her brother Darian has been forced to grow up early. And there's a great scene where Nadine and her mom have gotten into that fight, and Nadine takes the car and takes off. And this is when she's running off to her date with the bad boy in the Mercury Marquis. And Darian comes home, and mom is just like, ready to throw everything if Nadine's out of the house. And he's trying to calm her down. And she's like, look, I'm the parent here, And he's like, well, then why do you always call me?
Right.
And it's like, he's her go-to person. He's the dad surrogate. He's the dependable one. And we see that all throughout. As much as Nadine, is just offended by everything about him, he's been forced to grow up and just be the responsible one in the family because mom isn't. Mom takes off with the dentist, who's married. We later find out. So mom's not making smart choices. Nadine just has trouble communicating with people. And so Darian's like the foundation for that family.
Everyone is coping. in their own
Yes.
way, and they're doing it in very sloppy results.
Exactly. So I guess the parenting skill is don't treat your teenagers like they are adults. Don't put that on them,
That's
because
true.
we don't really get a lot of insight into Darian and how he's carrying that. But there is at one point where he and Nadine get into a fight, and Nadine talks about this. She tells the story of when, I think it's like the day of or the night they lost their dad, and how she, heard Darian crying, and just horribly, tears soaking his pillow, and that she swapped pillows with him.
Right.
And then she decides to throw that in his face and say, well, I wish you loved me that much.
And honestly, from an emotional perspective, I don't think that's throwing that in his face, because she really believes that. She really wants that.
Right. No, she does.
She that's the thing. They have such an inability to communicate because everyone is dealing with these different coping skills. It's like,
yes, that's true.
Again, it just goes back to how well the script is written, because this is all very real. This is the kind of stuff people do when they're coping with trauma like this, and it's touch and go. It's touch and go all through those years. And it's scary for me. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. So I'm thinking about what's coming up for them. And I'm just trying to, lay the groundwork to make them feel as comfortable and adjusted as possible so that they don't have to go through this kind of coping skills. But life is sometimes inevitable. There's not a whole lot you can do. You have to figure out a way to get through.
Right. And I think that comes down to, again, the relationship with the teacher. And when she has her night goes horribly wrong, the date goes horribly wrong, she runs off to the donut place and she calls somebody.
Yeah.
And we get sort of the reveal, she's in there. We hear the door chime and she looks up, and it's like, and it's been set up where, it's probably not mom. It might be her brother that's come to get her, because we know he's been out looking for her. But when Woody Harrelson walks in there, it's like, okay, we know who she sees as the stable one, even though she mocks him all the time. And we get some insight into his family life, which is completely different. I think every student goes through that point where you see your teacher as one person. If you ever encounter them in their real life out with family or something like that, and she gets that insight by seeing, oh, he has a wife and he's got a little kid. He's got this happy family, and he's happy at home. He's got a nice relationship with his wife. He's, not a disgruntled, angry loner.
Right.
He's a contented, family man. But when he drives her home, and it's this writing again with the sarcasm where he basically says, well, there's, we both know there's one thing that you need to do right now. Get out of my car.
Right.
But the sort of the subtext behind that is she's got to go in the house.
Yeah.
He's driven her home. She's got to get out of his car. She's got to walk into the house, and she's got to deal with these things,
right?
Which she's been avoiding. That's the message I'm taking away from this is he's telling her, you've got to confront this. You've got to go be part of that family and figure out how to make this work by saying sarcastically, get out of my car.
Yeah. And it has a little bit of that Erin Brockovich feeling where the people that she has to rely on to get to where she needs to be are also, if you look at it objectively, potentially threats in her life too. And the beauty of both stories, one of the things I love about Erin Brockovich and one of the things I love about this story is that all the characters and all the people in these stories, really the people characters in these stories, have the courage to make the connection, to reach out in a situation where it could end poorly in lots of different ways, but they have the courage to ask for help, and the help comes to them and they're able to overcome through it. And that was one of the things that I thought was really great in this story.
We often talk about who's the audience for this movie. And I know it's not, well, is it teens? Is it parents? Is it people that are in between, that it's a nostalgic look at high school in a realistic way that's sort of nice to look back and see how you've grown past that. Where do you see this one falling? Because I think that maybe the struggle with a film like this that is so smartly written and has these great characters with complex things, who is that real specific audience to connect with?
Well, I would think teens for sure, especially intelligent teens who review art with a very sort of discerning eye, because they're going to like the dialogue. They're going to like the depiction. I think it's real for us. Maybe I might be too old to really understand if it's real for today's teen. So maybe I shouldn't speak that way, but I think that is a great eye. The other thing is, I think if you like romantic comedies or dramedies, if you're an adult who likes dramedies, this movie is going to resonate with you too. When I think about it, this kind of going back to another Trailer Rewind movie, who did you think would have been the right audience for The Bachelors, for example?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because
I think
it works both ways, and I think this movie is superior to The Bachelors. I didn't like The Bachelors as much, but I think this is the same sort of thing where you're getting a lot of that drama, and then you have this sort of clever dialogue throughout. And I'm a big fan of clever. Clever goes a long way with me. If you like that sort of thing, this movie is going to be great for you. And I think it does work for adults, but a lot of sort of maybe mainline or people who think of mainstream movies as adults are going to see this and just think it's a teens movie too.
Yeah, and I think this type of movie is right in my wheelhouse. And as I've been saying for years, it's it's another golden age for teens except we've got more than John Hughes. You've got so many, solid, writers and directors that are treating teens respectfully and their problems and challenges. And I think that's one of the great things with, in the character of Nadine. It's the universal plight of the American teenager of, feeling alone and disconnected, and things don't go your way all of the time. That, oh my gosh, there's so many great moments. Just, praying to God about how everything just goes wrong, and then no toilet paper.
Yep.
I mean, but then layered in with everything that's contemporary for teens that they're going to identify with, the text messaging, all of those things where it's integrated well, and it still feels timeless because that's the means of communication now, and it works for me. It works well with this. And I think we're able to take those contemporary devices and put them into this, character piece, and it works so well to give us everything that we need to see the struggles that Nadine faces. What's great is there's not a lot of total pop culture references. There's a Napoleon Dynamite piece, early on with her hair when she's holding up the magazine with Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite.
Right.
And it's just like, yes, I look exactly like Pedro. What else could go wrong in her life?
I remember.
So and I guess you pick something like Napoleon Dynamite, which in of itself is sort of a, sort of cultural touchstone for kids that, 10 years down the road, I think people will still know know that movie. It's a classic, or those intelligent teens are going to be aware of that film. But it's not going to be one of these where you look at it and say, oh, the dialogue feels so much of an era because it's using little, phrases of that time. It's able to really stride that line between the universal, but still being relevant for teens where they're going to identify with specific things. I don't know what year this movie takes place in. We don't give a specific
I don't either.
setting.
It is. Well, it is. It does take place in Oregon. I'll tell you that. So Manzanita, where she goes with the dentist, is on the coast in Oregon.
Right.
And the phone number, whose phone number is it? Is 541, which is out of the city, which is great. Although it was very clearly filmed in California by a number of different things. When you have the Newport address on the wall and things like that, but it wasn't a problem. I really liked that. Yeah. You said that this movie's in your wheelhouse. Have you seen with Haley Lu 5 Feet Apart?
No.
5 Feet Apart was just out this year. Haley Lu Richardson.
Yeah, that's the one with the kids with
cystic fibrosis.
Fibrosis, and they can't. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's a little too much melodrama for me.
And it's more melodrama and it's more tragic. It digs much deeper. But it's meant to, and it's for the same sort of crowd. And I will tell you, I really like Haley Lu Richardson. I think she's fantastic. And, we've got Haley Steinfeld as the lead in this movie, and she's already kind of a bona fide superstar, right? I mean, she's a multi-art performer. She does music. She does all, and she's fantastic in this movie. And so I will leave her at that. But Haley Lu Richardson is coming up, and this movie 5 Feet Apart was really great. It's a little bit melodramatic, and there's some points in it that you get kind of frustrated with how the story takes it, and seems very unrealistic, but it's that kind of teen melodrama. And if this is in your wheelhouse, and if you liked Haley Lu Richardson, I think it would be a great movie to go see.
Because I'm only familiar with her with the other movie she was in in 2016 as one of the cheerleaders in Split.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh, that's amazing that she was there too. Yeah, I think she's going to do a lot of things. I think she's going to be really good.
No, I think like we said, all the performances here, it's the right people, just everything is so spot on. It's so great to see and refreshing to see a movie like this that is, I think, smart writing. The performances are right there. It's one that, I don't know that I'm going to be watching it all of the time, but I could imagine like my 15-year-old self really enjoying this movie.
Yeah.
Tremendously. But it reminds me of things like I'll always come back to like Me and Earl and the Dying Girl.
Sure.
8th grade from last year. Again, just, really being respectful of teens and giving weight to their, the challenges of, the darkness, and to show them that it's possible to get through these things, that, how devastating these things are. You will survive. You will endure. You will make it to the other side of these things.
And we end up seeing a lot of movies like this on Trailer Rewind. And I think a lot of that is because, this is a $9 million budget, made $14 million on the screen.
Yeah.
They're not ones that definitely grown-ups like us would go to choose to go see. I was kind of surprised that I went and saw 5 Feet Apart in the theater. But the thing about it is that they're available on Netflix. And we've done, Lean on Pete. We talk about The Bachelors. Yeah. We've talked about these kind of movies. They are available on streaming services, and it's a great thing for kids of that age. I would say anywhere from maybe 15 to 22 could really enjoy seeing this movie. So I'm going to recommend it to people. I don't know a whole lot of 15 to 22-year-olds, but I'm going to recommend it to people as something, again, one of those surprising movies that we've found through Trailer Rewind. Also, we didn't mention Kyra Sedgwick. Talking about the mom played by Kyra Sedgwick. I love Kyra Sedgwick. This is an interesting role for her because I feel like she always kind of plays a likable person, and she's really a mess in this movie, and it's really hard to like her. But again, I think she does a great job with the material, plays a layered role of a mom who cares, but also is struggling with her own coping of the tragedy that's in her life. I was really happy with her in this.
Yeah, that's one scene that really, there's these moments, and there's just that one scene at the office with mom where we sort of, this is the breaking point for Nadine, where that's where she takes off. But the nature of that argument and how we start off with just Nadine being Nadine, and then slowly building to the point where mom finally breaks and pulls out like the most brutal, the deepest of cuts, to say, because it starts with, a comment about her husband, and then Nadine takes offense, like, well, you can get a new husband, I can't get a new dad.
If my husband had any idea what I was going to have to deal with.
I love how you refer to him as your husband.
He is my husband.
You can run off and get a new husband. What he is my dad. Can't you just say that occasionally?
Fine. We're not talking about him right now, because it's just too upsetting.
It's too hard and too sad, and it gives me a cluster headache. I know.
Oh my God. You have no compassion.
Actually, I'm just bored because I know everything you're gonna do before you do it.
Sure you do.
Oh, you don't believe me?
No, I don't.
I'm gonna write down the next thing you're gonna say to me.
I'm not gonna play
your little games, Nadine.
Congratulations. All right, you know what? Here's something you're not gonna guess. Your dad would be so disappointed in the way you're turning out.
That's a mom. She knows, and it can be like,
it's a mom who's acting like a child. Let's say that first of all.
No, exactly, because we're now operating in teenager mode. Mom is operating at the level of Nadine, and it's like, well, you hurt me, I'm going to do everything I can to hurt you, and she pulls out the big guns on that one, and it was just. Yeah, it's these dynamics.
And it's also indicative of Nadine throughout the story. She doesn't realize, as a teen, she doesn't realize how much the things she says, the way she acts, affects other people. And that's where Woody Harrelson's role is so wonderful, because he is seemingly immune to it, right? So we get that sort of control. And then all these other people are so greatly affected by Nadine because she's morose. She's going through life, and she's really, her coping skill is trashing everyone around her. And she doesn't realize that. And that's really the arc that her character goes through this, that she understands her power and she kind of turns it around and starts using it for good. I think it's a beautiful story for teens dealing with trauma.
Yeah. So based on your glowing reviews there, where does this end up for you on your flick chart?
Well, before we talk about that, I want to say one other thing. So,
Okay. All right.
one thing I want to make sure that we talk about, I did have a favorite camera shot in this movie. I don't always
yes.
have a favorite camera shot, but
true.
there were a lot of very subtle, and I like that they're subtle, but they're all so artful shots in this movie that are kind of like candy. And if you go back and review a second time, which I don't know that you or I are going to do through this, but there's a scene where when Krista is with Darian, they've already separated from Nadine. Nadine is sitting and watching TV. I can't remember what she's watching on TV. She's watching a cartoon, I think. Gosh, I don't remember. But she's sitting and watching a TV, laying down on the couch. And Krista and Darian come in, and it starts with a wide shot, and you see them come into the stairwell, and it stays on them. But then it goes back to Nadine, who's our main character, right? This is her story. And in the shot, you've got a clear resolution, tight focus on Nadine's face. And through the bars of the stairwell, you can see Krista's legs and Darian's legs as they pause on the staircase to basically regard Nadine, but they're separated at this point, and then they just go up. And as they go up, the camera then moves on the z-axis, so going up, it and then tilts down, and also then widens out. And the camera in this movie, tons of times, was isolating Nadine in a scene by herself with a wide shot to show how alone she felt. And this, from that moment, gave us how close these super important people were in her life.
Oh, yeah.
And as they walk away, how she just is left with this empty feeling. And it's done by the movement of the camera. It's beautiful. It's super short. This whole sequence is maybe 15 to 20 seconds, but this is the kind of stuff that I see as sort of brilliant subtlety in movies, and you don't get that in everything. So in this little teen movie, I mean, I had multiple times that I was blown away. That was my favorite shot because the camera move meant something to the story, and I loved that. So I definitely want to talk about that.
Being aware of things like that makes the end even more so. When you notice it's at the film festival, and she's, there as sort of like, well, I'm going to try to make things up. So I'm going to go to the early morning film festival and all of that and see Irwin's film. And then she and Irwin have their discussion in a moment, but then he invites her over to the friends, and he walks in, and she sort of backs up to stay outside the circle, and he grabs her and pulls her in to be part of the circle and everything. And
are
then
you going to share this movie with your girls?
Oh, yeah.
So
yes,
if you watch it again, I think they did a trick in that scene. So as he reaches back and invites her into the circle, which is just a beautiful, just subtle blocking thing to show how much she's changed, I believe they put a light on her. And I would love to know if throughout the film she's sort of gaunt and dark, because it is a really warm yellow light, and it is as if it's even making me emotional to just talk about it. It is as if the sun rises on Nadine in that moment, and it's the final. I mean, it's the end of the movie. It's the final thing we're going to see, and how wonderful to go through this whole thing with Nadine, and then for her to join here, like you're talking about. What a great step, and to do it in what feels like a practical way. And if they didn't put a light on it, gosh, Haley Steinfeld sure decided to glow in that moment, because it was fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the other part is it ends right when it needs to.
Yeah,
because it's not about necessarily a boy saving her or having to be in a relationship, giving her life meaning or anything. It's stepping in and being part of a community. It's
I love it. Yep.
Not being alone anymore, because as you said, that shot. Shows she is so isolated. Even when people are near her, she is alone. And now she is, stepping in and engaged in conversation with a group of people. So, I will take a look. Because my oldest comes home next week, and it may be uncomfortable with some of the explicit language, but we will,
and the subject matter,
be grown-ups, and we will get through that. Yes, we will.
Good.
Okay. All right. So, flick chart.
Okay.
where you're going to put this one.
It's
Where did
pretty
it end up?
weird, and it's funny that you bring up Split. I didn't remember that Haley Lou Richardson was in that, but she's like one of my new favorites. But Split is my midway point. So Split is the thing that always puts something on the top of the bottom. So I didn't put it over Split. So it goes down a little bit, but not too much farther. It's number 109 out of 200, and you know, you think about this as a 2016. It's a young person movie. It is just below The Abyss. I mean, how do you can't this and The Abyss? They're two completely different realms. And then above National Lampoon's Vacation. So you've got like these two classics of genre movies that are totally grown up movies. And it's sandwiched in between there. And really the reason that I put it over Vacation is because I value clever more than I value funny. And I do think Vacation is funny, but this is so clever and deserves some respect there. So I put it at 109 out of 200. How about you?
Okay. Mine's a little higher than that.
Good.
My entry point at Flickchart right now is Elf, which I really enjoy. But again, I think it's the which is a fun movie, and you know, Edge of 17 it's hard to say it's a fun movie, but it's a more rewarding view. Again, I'll probably watch Elf. That becomes a Christmas classic. I'm not going to watch Edge of 17, but I always give more weight to a story that's going to tackle something like this. It's got something important to say. It's I think going to be valuable to people. So it ended up in a really strange place. Number 94.
Okay.
Just above Dodgeball, which is one of my all-time favorite comedies, but then just below a film I watched last week, Leave No Trace, which is at number 93.
Oh, yeah. That's Ben Foster, right?
Yeah. So, but this is, I mean, my top 100, it's getting pretty tight up there. And then just above that is Sing Street, which I could say, okay, yes, there we are. We're right in this is the little bit of the darker side, but still about, you know, those, you know, sort of growing pains. So for me, this one falls, I think, full on into like 4-star territory.
Yeah, I'm doing 3.5 for me too. I was a 3 before we had this conversation, and I'm realizing that I liked it a lot more than that. I'm sure that the algorithm would put me at about 3, but I think it's 3.5 for me. It's tough to compare it to the other movies that I have in that sort of 3.5 range, but it's deserving of a view. I think that if these kind of movies, you mentioned they're in your wheelhouse, if you like these kind of movies at all, this is going to be a good movie for you.
Oh yeah, I'd say anybody that, as you said, I think anybody in that age range is going to enjoy this movie. Again, maybe it's one to watch on your own. Maybe be a loner like Nadine and watch this one. I don't know that this is like get a group of friends together and watch this one, because it may unearth some emotions in some people. And you know, I think that for teens, maybe just when you're feeling like you just want to spend some time with a close friend, maybe Nadine can be that awkward close friend for you.
Well, I like that you mentioned John Hughes, because I think that this has it has the clever. It has that John Hughes clever gene in it. It's a little bit more all over the place. You know, John Hughes is a little bit more singular in focus, but this is maybe something like a 2016 version of a John Hughes movie. I love it.
Yeah, a brand new 16 Candles. There we go.
2016.
All right. Well, everyone out there, if you haven't already, please head over to iTunes and give us a rating and a review. It helps other film fans discover us. And if you want to support us on Patreon, hey, you're joining a great community of film fans, including some that are really into film as art and some that just really enjoy entertaining movies. We'd love to have you join the community. Heading over to Patreon, you can always check out our SatMat episodes that are being posted there now. If you want to get a taste of the various types of things that we talk about in the whole Next Reel family of films, because we've got the film board going on, we've got the trailer rewind, we've got the big show with Andy and Pete doing their Ingrid Bergman series right now. So all that comes together, and and the Marvel Movie Minute.
Yeah.
We got so much stuff going on here. So it's a great way to get sort of a sampler plate of the buffet of things here at the Next Reel. So I always want to give a special thanks to Pete. We made it tough for him tonight, giving him something to edit together, make us sound good. Thank you, Pete. We always appreciate it.
Doc.
JJ, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, man. See you on the next one.
Hondo.